What is going on, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel and welcome in to the reveal of my number 16th ranked team in my NBA preseason power ranking series with the deep dive into the Golden State Warriors. Man, oh man, I can't wait for this episode, guys. Super excited for this one. The Warriors officially in the middle part of this of the league for me. This is easily the farthest I've ever gone in this series, and really excited to finish this back-to-back days of deep dives for my power ranking series. And then tomorrow, the plan is to have another episode out, number 15th ranked team. That way we can kind of speed this up just a little bit so we can make sure we finish this before the season starts. So the plan is number 16, as you guys watch right now, and then number 15, the plan is so that's to drop tomorrow, and then 14 will take a day off or whatever, kind of recuperate. The number 14 will drop Saturday. That's the hope. But yeah, Golden State Warriors here. Coming in with an 81.480 grade for me. The margins are really close now as we are in the thick of things here. This is my tier 4 of NBA teams. All these teams are teams that I think that their goal is to make the playoffs. I think anything less than them making the playoffs at least would be a failure, a complete failure of a season. And the Warriors are in the middle, or right in the midst of that, in my opinion. But now let's kind of dive in here how we always start, and that's by looking at the offseason recap, additions and departures. And we're going to get a rant here at some point from the Warrior, from me about this Warriors offseason. But they lose Klay Thompson, they lose Chris Paul, they lose Dario Saric. It felt more and more obvious as the season was kind of going on that Klay Thompson probably wasn't going to be back in a Warriors jersey. And I understand Golden State not really wanting to commit to Klay. I think Klay at this point is kind of a shell of himself. And the Warriors were really relying on Klay last season, and he just didn't deliver when they needed him to. The injuries have completely tarnished anything he is defensively. And then, sure, he could still be a flamethrower at times, but to consistently count on Klay now in 2024, you just can't do that. Where even in 2022, 23, sure, he was really inconsistent, but there was a stretch, I want to say in March, where Klay Thompson, when Steph went down, was carrying this team. It looked like shades of old Klay Thompson, and we just never really got to see that again from Klay. They lose Chris Paul, completely fine. I think actually Golden State, in terms of what they actually brought in, they had a good offseason. They bring in Anthony Melton. They also lose Dario Saric too. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But they bring in Anthony Melton. They bring in Buddy Hield. They bring in Kyle Anderson. 3 really good additions and guys that immediately can kind of help out this team. Anthony Melton, a guy that in his own right, you're kind of needing to stay healthy. But with Anthony Melton, when he's played, he's a guy that is a really good defender. That is honestly just a 3-and-D guard that this team could really use. He's still only somehow 26 years old. I feel like we've been talking about Anthony Melton for a while now, if we're being completely honest. He had a really healthy 2023 season with the Sixers. Was a very positive defensive player for them that season, but also shot 39% from 3 last season, 2.9% steal percentage. He is insane. Last year, only played 38 games last season. Actually, last season was the first time in Anthony Melton's career where he had it was a positive in both offensive and defensive EPM per ducks and threes. So you're hoping he's able to stay healthy. And honestly, this is a pretty nice deal for him as well. Kind of a prove-it deal here for Anthony Melton. Buddy Hield, honestly, is just the shooting replacement, I guess, for Klay, where you could bring him in. He can be the dynamic shooting threat that they want. They're gonna miss now from not having Klay. Buddy Hield, one of the more prolific 3-point shooters in the league, I'm not gonna say creates the attention that a Klay Thompson does, but can be used in off-screen stuff. The thing that I'm kind of curious to see, Steve Kerr utilize him more as an off-screen shooter. In Indiana, he was primarily used as a spot-up guy. Same with Philly. we haven't really seen him in a few years now being weaponized as this movement shooter. And, previous years, he hasn't been great at it. So I'm curious to see if the Warriors do kind of tap into this a little bit more. And then Kyle Anderson, solid defender, good connective piece. At times, a liability offensively, but overall, a really, really good depth piece for this Warriors team. And before I kind of go on my rant, I do think again the Warriors did get better because I think honestly 1 through 12, I'm going to list off this roster here of like the top 12. I think Steph, Brand Podziemski, Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Draymond, D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, Kyle Anderson, Trace Jackson Davis, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II. I would argue that this is probably a deeper team, for sure the deepest team they've had since that 2022 championship team. But this is I would argue, even if we pull up really quickly, you go back and look at that 2022 championship team, I would argue this is a deeper team than that year's team, if we're being completely honest. Like, this Warriors team can really go a legit 12 deep in the Western Conference. I'm sorry, not Western Conference, but this team can really, really go a legitimate 12 deep. This team is really, really good in terms of their depth, excuse me. And we're going to see that here in just a sec. But again, going back to that championship season, if you just look at the roster from that championship season, Steph, Clay, Jordan Poole, Kuminga, Looney, Dre, Bielitsa, Juan Toscano Anderson, who played great for them, Otto Porter Jr., who played great for them, and Moses Moody as a sophomore, I want to say, that year. Or maybe that was his rookie year. No, that would have been his rookie year, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But if we're being honest, that team was just elevated by Steph Curry having a late peak, if you will. I think that 2022 version of Steph Curry is one of the 3 or 4 best versions of Steph. It's like that's my 2018 LeBron, where 2013 LeBron's like 2016 Steph. 2022 Steph is my 2018 LeBron, where okay, 2016 Steph is when he was at his most dominant, like you just couldn't, game wrecking. That's peak athletically probably, and peak, right? But 2022, more well-rounded, more complete defender, just smarter player, things like that. That's for me 2022 Steph. And then honestly, they got like kind of overachievers from their role players. Like Otto Porter Jr., granted it's because of health, but Otto Porter Jr. had one of the best seasons of his career in Golden State off the bench. Juan Toscano Anderson was so good, they got paid by the Lakers to not do anything. Vet men, whatever, but you get my point. Bielitsa was a fine role player for them, but you look at this year's team, like I said, a legitimate 12 deep. But the question then begins to be asked, and it's, Sean, you're praising this Warriors team so freaking much. Why are there why are they only 16th in the Western Conference? I'm sorry, not the Western Conference, excuse me. Why are they only 16th in the power ranking series? And it's because as deep as this team is, I don't think there is any realistic world this team wins the championship this season. And it's frustrating to me because you have Steph Curry, who, and this can actually kind of be our blend into the roster breakdown. You have Steph Curry as your best player, who I still think, even though you are seeing ever so slight signs of regression from Steph, and a lot of that is because of his age. He probably shouldn't be getting this amount of attention that he is still getting. He's 36 years old. He'll be 37 in March. I still think Steph Curry is a 1A guy on a championship team. I don't think, as ever so slight the regressions have been shown from Steph, I don't think he's shown you anything that you can go, yeah, he could be the best player, or he couldn't be the best player on the championship team. So I still think he has that in him. But I am just so pissed off at the Warriors' unwillingness to go and get a Lauri Markkanen, go all in and get a Lauri Markkanen. And if it costs freaking over Brandon Podziemski, like, I'm going to do this here live on the spot. Give me 1 sec. I want you guys to see where the Warriors would be ranked at if they freaking added. If we just swap out Podziemski and we swap out Moses Moody and maybe you take off one of those role players for cap reasons, let's see where this team would be. Give me 1 sec. All right, guys. As you guys can see here, I'm trying to put up a graphic here. The Warriors, if you add Lauri Markkanen to this team, you replace, let's say, Kuminga, you replace I'm sorry, not Kuminga. Well, yeah, I mean, let's just say they overpaid or whatever. It's Kuminga and his pods and like 2 firsts or whatever, right? Who knows what the deal would have actually been. Okay, cool. This team would have been an 80, like they would have had an 83.54 grade for me. Let's just say the starting 5 was Steph Curry, I don't know, DeAnthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins, Lauri Markkanen, and Draymond Green, plus the bench, plus Steve Kerr, who does give his team a coaching grade as well. This team would be 8th in my power ranking series, firmly in the tier of teams that they aren't, the best team in the league, but this is one of the teams that could definitely win a title this year. And I don't think this team has done, I don't think they're giving them a real shot to compete for a title this season. And again, that actually grade, you keep Kuminga, then you're looking a lot closer to like 6th. If it was, let's say it's Paz, Moses Moody, 2 first or whatever, cool. You look at the 6th best team in the league, in my opinion. One of the front runners in the Western Conference. And I personally don't think, after look at the film, look at kind of the roster construction, I think this team has pretty major concerns and weaknesses that unless Jonathan Kuminga turns into an all-star this season, I just don't see a world where this team turns into this title contender. And as you guys can see here, I have them as my 9th best team in the Western Conference. So even though I think the Warriors missing the playoffs will be a failure, I have them as a play-in team. Technically, if we're going off where I have them at in my if we're doing kind of this as a standings thing too. So I don't know. I'm just really, really disappointed. Lauri Markkanen is the perfect freaking fit for this team. He's also a guy that can create for himself, can help Steph get a little bit of a breather and not have all the attention in the world focused on him. Imagine Lauri Markkanen with Steve Kerr's playbook. Are you kidding me? Like, super, super frustrating. Him next to Draymond Green defensively. Super frustrating. The lack of aggressiveness really since like that since KD left, I would even argue. Like, this team has been trying to play 2 timelines. Like, they go for fit with James Wiseman instead of drafting Anthony. Not it would have been Anthony Edwards, or just drafting BPA. Ant went number 1, right? They get Kuminga and Moody, which is fine. Kuminga's turned out to be a really good player for them. But in hindsight, they really should have just put the chips in and try to maximize this run with Stephen Curry, your franchise, the greatest player in your franchise. But now let's start the roster breakdown. Sorry for the tiny rant there, if you will. And once again, this team, they grade out well for me in a lot of categories with like the tiers and stuff like that. Steve Kerr, I have him as tier 3. My NBA coaches, ranking 8th to 12th. He's a good NBA coach. I think a lot of his shortcomings have been kind of, brought to the front of the of everybody's attention recently. But I think at the end of the day, he is. If we're talking about like a game 7, like any one coach to win me a game 7, his creativity, his matchups, and how he's willing to adjust to things like that. I mean, there's maybe a handful of coaches I'd rather have over Steve Kerr. One of the best offensive playbooks in the game as well. A bunch of creative stuff, how he's weaponized. And actually, I'm going to defend Steve Kerr here. Everybody talks about how, like, oh man, Mark Jackson doesn't get enough credit. Mark Jackson deserves his credit for kind of enabling Steph and Clay and saying, hey, look, go be great, go do this, and that, play with confidence. Steve Kerr took that. He did take that, and kudos to Mark Jackson. But Steve Kerr took that and weaponized it and literally helped change the game of basketball and how we kind of view it because of these 2 freakazoids and Steph and Clay. It's going to be weird not seeing those 2 guys play next to each other. Not going to lie. But again, Steve Kerr, 8 to 12. This bench is awesome. Serious, like, it kicks ass. That's how good this bench is. My tier 2 of NBA benches, ranking 3rd to 8th. It is awesome. There is a very clear like top 2 benches in my opinion, but outside of that, like they are right in kind of that very next tier for me for NBA benches. And then this defense, I'm kind of ranking on its low end, I think. And that's still saying something because I think on its low end, this team is still can be like a top, like a middle of the pack defense. I have them ranking in my tier 4 of NBA defenses, ranking 14th to 16th. There's some defensive talent here. We'll talk about that in a second. There is legitimate defensive potential with this team. All right, let's start this off. Steph Curry, who in 2024, like I mentioned, is still capable of being flat out the best player on the championship team. Still possesses the game-breaking superstar ability to just take over games and be a nightmare for opposing teams. Very much Patrick Mahomes-esque. Think with a football comparison there, where you dread. He can be having the worst shooting stretch of his life, and you're still going to dread having to play Steph Curry. Patrick Mahomes could have the 3 worst games of his life, and you see him on the schedule, and it's, oh shit, we have to play that guy next week. Great. It's still very much that. And obviously, the greatest shooter of all time. Steve Kerr's offense does, like I said, a bunch of great stuff, but a really, really good job and runs good stuff to weaponize the fact that Steph's the greatest shooter of all time. And he's always done that. However, and this is a problem I think might get, blown up a little bit more this season. Steph's only getting older. He's coming off a Team USA run, which, by the way, he was freaking dominant for. Especially that France fourth. Oh my God, the Olympic gold medal game, that fourth quarter from Steph. That's kind of what I'm talking about with Steph, where he could just turn into still at this age the best player in the league, even for a stretch if he needs to. But like I said, however, you are able to bother him a bit more, and if a team has the personnel, you can make games rough for them. Like I think about that Raptors game after they made some of their trades. They got they got RJ quickly, things like that. I think Pascal was still on the roster though at the time of when they played them this time around. And I think about that game and the Raptors' size and Scotty and pests like Dennis Schroeder and how they're able to harass him. And it was a very particular game plan. Like, not a lot of teams in the league can kind of replicate it because what the Raptors were doing this game is they had Scotty Barnes shadow. They had Scotty Barnes shadow Steph to where, all right, look, I'm picking you up full court to where you're going to want to give the ball up eventually because you're just going to tire yourself out by me guarding you 94 feet the whole night. And then once you do give the ball up, we can give we could care less what those other guys do. They're going to play 4-on-4 and we're going to take you out of the game. And if that means, hey, I get to rest on defense too, and I got to take myself out of the defensive equation, that's cool as long as you don't touch the ball. And every look you do get, we're going to switch. We're going to be physical. We're going to play up to touch, and we're going to make your life hell. And that's one of the best jobs I think a team has done at guarding Steph in a long time. But the difference is, like, with the lack of a real number 2 scoring option, we changed the color on accident. The lack of a real number 2 scoring option, I think you could see teams kind of hone in on Steph a little bit more than we previously would have seen. Now, there are still cases of where it just sometimes won't matter still because Steph is a truly great player. But I do question, again, at this age, at about to be 37, and with his particular play style, and with the fact, like I said, that I don't think you have a real number 2 scoring option. I do wonder if we start to see these types of games more frequently where a team just looks at that and says, all right, look, we're just going to base guard and deny Steph all game. Anytime they try to run him off a screen and stuff like that, we're just going to be ultra aggressive. He's going to be tired out anyway. So he's going to be short on his shot and things like that. He didn't hit a 3 that Raptors game. He hit, I think, 2 reverse layups, I think, and maybe got to the line a couple of times. But it was a really rough Steph game. And I do worry about that a little bit. That's not even a knock on Steph necessarily. Like I say, he's getting up there in age, and I don't think this team has done a great job of surrounding him with the necessary pieces. He's still a really good passer, although not elite and never really has been elite. Steph's playmaking actually has kind of been more of his gravity, and that's kind of helped his playmaking. He's not the Luka playmaker where it's, and by gravity for Steph, off-ball gravity. that kind of helps the playmaking equation for Steph and make up for it. Where Luka, again, like I mentioned, is a lot more on ball. And, kind of wrap things up with Steph, man. I just really, really wish that the organization would be more aggressive at getting in pieces that can still contend for a championship, because this team could pretty easily miss the playoffs. And we just wasted a year of Steph. You know what I'm saying? Because even though this team is the deepest team they've had in a while, even more, I would argue, than the championship team back in 2022, as indicated with my ranking of the Warriors, I don't think it's even close to being a lock that this team makes the playoffs, let alone a deep playoff run. And that's even if this team's healthy. I think a lot of things have to go their way for us to talk about a deep playoff run. But then you have Brandon Podziemski, who I do like. I don't want like Pods to get a bunch of crap for me now, because I kind of, ranted about him and how the Warriors need to trade him to go get Lauri Markkanen. But Pods is fun. And if Pods and Jonathan Kuminga by the end of the season pan out and make me look like an idiot, then sure. But I'm gonna, stick with my guns and we're gonna ride out with this one. But Pods is a really, really fun guy. And I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if they went with maybe a Buddy in the starting five. But I think you could really, really use Pods' defense. I don't love his POA, but his point of attack defense. But kind of similarly to a guy like a Draymond in a certain way, where like their hustle, their instincts, their timing in the passing lanes, and just their hands and how smart these guys all are really is awesome. It's really, really awesome. Potts is a fun player. He can play off the ball, knock down, catch and shoot threes, shot the hell out of the ball on pull-up scenarios last season. As I want to say, he shot over 40% on pull-up threes last season per Synergy. And yeah, he shot 42.5% on pull-up threes, 36% on catch and shoot threes. I like to see the spot up and the off-ball efficiency improve. I would say that's probably the biggest thing with Pods. I don't think he was his ultra efficient off-ball player, particularly attacking closeouts, where I think his technique when attacking closeouts can be better. He shot 33% on spot up twos, where it is a lot of him attacking closeouts. He's already not the most athletic guy, so he kind of goes to the rim a little bit clunky and things like that. 27th percentile for spot up points per possession with Brandon Podziemski. Could be a better transition finisher and things like that, but can create for himself again from the perimeter, can knock down pull-ups, active cutter. I think he really, really fits into the system nicely. And the playmaking, I think right now is a little bit more secondary, but I will say he can really create a little bit out of ball screens, help set his teammates up, things like that. So I like Pods. I really like Pods coming out of Santa Clara, unless I'm just like botching that. I really, really did like Pods coming out, and he was actually one of my draft sleepers, right? In that draft class, Santa Clara in the 2023 draft class. One of my sleepers lands at Golden State, and it just sucks because I think if he doesn't kind of reward the Warriors for their trust in his upside, he's going to get a lot of negative PR, and I hope he rewards them because I like Pods a ton. Like I said, I love his defensive activity. He freaking hustles and plays hard. And for the Warriors' sake, they need him to kind of reward their faith. But then you have Jonathan Kuminga, another guy they are banking on hard, who, I will say Jonathan Kuminga had, for sure, the best year of his career. Had the best year of his career. For sure. Year 3. With NBA players, I think it is important that by year 3, you really, really start to get an idea like, okay, like this is what we got here. And Jonathan Kuminga is so freaking good at just creating paint touches and creating advantages to get downhill, finish through contact. And he is a joy to watch. Truthfully, he averages per dunks and threes 7.8 rim field goal attempts per 75 possessions, which is stupid. That's stupid levels of volume in terms of just his slashing ability. He's only 21 years old. So I understand them kind of being stingy with the Jonathan Kuminga, saying, "Oh no, like hold on, guys, like this guy is gonna be big time for us." But the thing is, can he be that for them this season? And that's where I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit, because I think for the Warriors, they would need him to be an all-star this season. And with Kuminga, the shot is still coming around for sure. Last season, I mean, he's shooting it fine on pull-ups. If I pull up his synergy data here one more time, I mean, he shot. Actually, no, it's actually the opposite. He shot 40% on pull-up twos. I like his willingness to get to the pull-up in the mid-range, and it does seem like he's getting more and more comfortable with the pull-up too. He's just not a good enough three-point shooter right now, self-created or spot up, to be completely honest. And that's why at times, like playing him next to Draymond can kind of be a hassle, because you have Draymond, who teams are willing to let shoot, and then you have Kuminga, who teams are also willing to let shoot. The shooting regressed even. He took less shot attempts from three last season. Now his mid-range volume really took a shot up. Last season, took 5 mid-range field goal attempts per 75 possessions compared to 2.7 during his sophomore season. So there is still a pretty high ceiling with Jonathan Kuminga. I honestly just don't know what it is with Jonathan Kuminga. Like what's the player comp for Jonathan Kuminga? I have a really, really hard time figuring that one out. But super, super active cutter. Essentially anything that involves him playing and finishing through contact around the rim, he is awesome with. Like he's the man. He's the man. I love Jonathan Kuminga. Um, Great freaking finisher. 8.5, 8.3 drives per 75 possessions. He's creating a lot of his downhill attacks. I mean, he's fun. He's a really, really fun player. It just comes down to, is he able to be, an all-star here in year 4? And then defensively too, he's a really good defender. He's kind of their on-ball wing stopper, which kind of allows Draymond to roam a little bit and do some things like that. He has good lateral agility, I think, and quickness. He has the frame and the contact strength and things like that, I think, to be able to guard on the perimeter against the bigger wings and things like that. This is a big year for Jonathan Kuminga. Played 74 games last season. His estimated wins was 5.2. He's contributing. He averaged 21.9 points per 75 possessions. So with Kuminga, don't know where the ceiling kind of stops. I do have the arrow pointed up on Jonathan Kuminga, but it is what it is, and I'm curious to see. I do think the arrow's pointing up on Jonathan Kuminga though, heading into year 4. Then we got Andrew Wiggins, and it's so tough to evaluate Andrew Wiggins. And honestly, you could make the argument that I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt here, because he's been through a lot of personal stuff recently in the past year or so. And even though he played 71 games, I still think you can argue it bothered him. Another underrated factor for this Warriors team is, can he somehow I know we're like 2 years removed now, but can he get back to that championship form for Andrew Wiggins, where he was one of the better 3-and-D wings in the league, but he was also like legitimately creating for himself and playing off of closeouts and things like that. But then he could also just lock up the opposing team's best player. He's also dealt with some injuries too, if I recall correctly. Wiggs is entering. I mean, he's 29. He'll be 30 in February. So I don't think his prime is like done. I still think he could get back to some form. I don't think it's like just lost the talent and things like that. But you definitely need him to kind of like rewind the clock a little bit, go back to that 2022 form, and that's really what it's going to come down to. Still a really, really good offensive rebounder. The shots kind of abandoned him last season as well. Again, you go back to the championship season, shot the hell out of the ball. Really, really good in isolation. When he was in his prime or whatever, his technique when guarding in one-on-one isolation, or the ability to get skinny and still affect shots when guarding ball screens and things like that. He was a big part of this team's game plan for Luka Doncic, even. And then he also has some like low man help, ability as well, which can really help this team out defensively, especially in a lineup where I'm actually having them starting Draymond as the 5, and they could really use kind of the active version of Andrew Wiggins again, who that championship season guarded point guards 26% of the time, two guards 22% of the time. Instead of reading out every position, the 1 through the 4, every single position was at least 17% or higher. And then even 5s, 11.7% of the time. The versatility that he was providing for that championship team, they could really, really use again for this year's team, because that is not what we've been seeing from Wiggs. Last season he guarded a lot of 1s, guards a lot of 2s, but the versatility's fallen off just a little bit for Wiggs, and just not being as impactful in the passing lanes and things like that. This team can really, really use like peak version of Andrew Wiggins back. And again, who knows if it's still in there? We're 2 years removed now. Was a pretty bad finisher around the rim too. Had a really high turnover percentage for his usage. Hope everything's good with him personally, because damn, could this team really, really utilize him and use him this season. And then we have Draymond Green, and I know it is, the popular thing to do in 2024 is to just crap on Draymond Green, but and he is a dirty player and things like that. But I mean, one of my favorite players to watch in the past few years, really, when you look at the dynasty of the Warriors, one of my favorite players to watch in general is Draymond Green when he's not punching people. And please do not have an incident this season. He played in 55 games this season. He played in 73 the year before. Played in 46 the year after the championship year. Like, please. Would that have been the year after? I think that would have been the year after the championship year. No, last year would have been the year after the title. Sorry. But please do not have another freaking incident with Draymond. And that's always something you got to worry about with Draymond. He's only played, since like the KD days. He's only played 70 games in a year once. That would have been last season, 2023. He played 55 this year, 73 year before that. Then it's 46, 63, 43, 66. Like, we got to stay on the floor. This defense is going to need you. Draymond's still one of the reasons why I have this defense so high, if you will, 14th to 16th. And it's just safe to say that Draymond Green is one of the 5 best defenders of the past 20 years or so. A couple of guys that come to my mind. It's him, it's Anthony Davis, it's Tim Duncan still, right? Like 3 of the 5 best defensive players. And what makes Draymond so elite, because Draymond isn't, not saying he's a bad rim protector, but that's not what makes Draymond special. He's not a Rudy Gobert, where Rudy Gobert is a generational like drop coverage big that can, camp out the paint, protect the rim, and make things tough. That's not what makes Draymond so special. Draymond Green's instincts, his timing, and, I don't know how many players still in the, like currently even, are smarter than Draymond Green when it comes to deciding when to help and what shots are we going to live with. And if I'm the low man and I'm guarding with Maxi Kleber, but Luka Doncic is in a ball screen right now and he's dicing us up, hey, who cares what Maxi Kleber is shooting from the corner, coach? I got to help, and I got to make sure that we protect the rim, and I'm going to close out like a maniac and still make sure we get a good contest and we live with that possession. And that's actually that's equally as important to me, to the instincts of the timing and the IQ, because it's one thing to be where you need to be in the gaps and things like that, have like gap technique and discipline, if you will. But Draymond's recovery has always been elite, in my opinion, where he can get beat back door and bang, he's right there blocking the shot at the rim. Or he can maybe even overhelp just a little bit, more than you would want any other guy to overhelp. But as Draymond Green, he's going to contest like a madman and still get a really good contest on the shot, right? Now, with Draymond, and honestly with Steve Curry even, and with Steph, when you're guys like them at this point in their, kind of historic careers together at this point, they're not going to get up for every game. It's going to be a night in November when they play the Charlotte Hornets or whatever on the second I have a back-to-back, and they're just not going to give a damn, right? And Draymond's kind of the embodiment of that. I think that's honestly why you're not going to get a bunch of all-NBA defensive nods from Draymond anymore. The minutes we're down last season too, only played 27 minutes. Also was dealing with like some nagging injuries throughout the year, things like that. Actually would have even qualified, so that's really the reason why. But he's just big game Dre at this point. If it's a big game, if it's a Saturday night prime time on ABC and it's the Lakers coming to town, best believe you're getting defensive player of the year, eater of world version of Draymond Green, where he's flying around, he's contesting shots at the rim, he's being an all-time level communicator. Draymond Green, in a best case world, I think still could be, you would want to be like your 4. And I wouldn't be surprised if they rolled out, like, let's say Wiggs just doesn't have it. If they rolled out like a Steph, Melton / Podzemski, Kuminga, Dre, Trey Jackson Davis. I mean, the shooting from the lineup isn't the greatest, but that wouldn't really surprise me. Because then you really let Draymond be this free safety. But again, even when lineups with Draymond's the 5, this is why I'm not that concerned about it, actually. For, again, kind of these bigger games, if you will. With Draymond as the 5, again, his recovery speed is so insane. Kuminga and Wiggs and Steph even and D'Anthony Melton and Podzemski, all smart defenders at the very least, can play in the gaps and allow Draymond to rotate and scramble like a madman if they're playing high pick and roll and they're using him as a hedge guy or as a switch guy. And he can scrub like a madman and still be able to contest the rim and things like that. So enough rambling about Draymond's defense. Obviously, he's a great passer. We know that. He's going to have a couple of just dumb passes every game and every once in a while. But for what he does for this offense, the ability to have the processor to make the reads necessary on some of their split cut actions, obviously his chemistry with Steph is stupid. And it's one of the reasons why that after all these years, the two guys that are still here, Steph and Draymond. So, if anything's going to happen with this team defensively, it starts and ends with Draymond Green, who I think is still, one probably top 10 defensively. There's a lot of really, really good defenders in the league right now. And, the lists get harder and harder to make when we're talking about defenses. But talk about the bench really, really briefly. Like I said, Anthony Melton's a really, really fun bench player or potential starter. If he's healthy, real potential to be a 3-and-D guard that this team can use. And then you have Kyle Anderson and a guy, again, solid defender, connected playmaker, but he had one of his worst offensive seasons in his entire career in terms of value, where he just really couldn't do much at all. He didn't have much to offer at all, really, for Minnesota. And then, Trey Jackson Davis, who I'll admit I was kind of just wrong about with Trey Jackson Davis, and that's just a miss on my part. A really, really, really fun player for Golden State that they found with, I want to say, the 55th pick in the draft last season. Great finisher, legit like rim protector, insane screener. They combines that with like his defensive rebounding. He might be, if he's the best shot blocker, even though like he's only 6'9", 6'10", if he's the best shot blocker by the end of the season with how, Steve Kerr will kind of implement him and utilize him, would it surprise me if he's the best shot blocker on this team definitively by the end of the year? And like I said, really, really, really good finisher. I'm a fan of Trey Jackson Davis. That was just a miss on my part. Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, just vets here at this point. Kevon Looney, there's rumors that he's like really slimmed up, like back to Wink kind of status. But he's a Warriors guy. He's the ultimate warrior. Pun there. Does the dirty work. Capable playmaker. Phenomenal rebounder. Like that's easily still the best thing he gives his Warriors team. Had probably the worst year of his career, and that's why, in recent years, like last year, comparatively speaking, was the lowest minutes he's played despite being available for 74 games last season. But, yeah, hoping Kevon Looney can kind of bounce back for this team. And then Gary Payton II, good cutter, good defender, but never really was able to like make it consistent on the offensive end. Great defensive playmaker for this team as well. And then that's going to wrap up our player breakdown. Let's take a look at our strengths and weaknesses and our Vegas over-under odds here. Strength number one, it's easily Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time, one of the 10 to 12-ish best players of all time. He's freaking insane. I think the shooting between Buddy, between Steph, Podziemski, DeAnthony Melton, Steph Curry's on the team. Shooting's going to be a strength. And I think they have potential to be a top 10 defense. Will they be a top 10 defense? I don't know, but I think they have real potential to kind of be there with Draymond hopefully having somewhat of a full year. And then, Kuminga, Wiggins kind of getting back to where he kind of had been before, a lot of this stuff went down with Andrew Wiggins. And then you're really, really looking for Podziemski to take a POA step, DeAnthony Melton to stay freaking healthy. I am admitting I'm ranking them on the low end, but this is something that could very easily make me look like an idiot at the end of the season. And the weaknesses, I hate the direction of this team. I don't think that they are doing everything in their power to give Steph a team that can compete for a championship right now. Consistent number 2 scoring threat. Again, hey man, maybe Kuminga makes me look like a complete idiot, and Kuminga's awesome, and he's an all-star by the end of the season. But then flexibility. I don't look at this Warriors team and think that they have a bunch of different ways to win basketball games. I think they have a pretty predictable formula to try to beat you, which is going to make them very, very matchup dependent. And that concerns me. And when you look at their Vegas odds, I think the fact that they have plus 4,500 odds to win an NBA championship this season, I think that's a joke. It's a massive joke, in my opinion, when you look at that. Especially when we compare that to teams that are around their range. Then to come out of the West plus 2,200. Again, the Vegas is begging you to lose your money, in my opinion, at least, right? Warrior fans might feel differently, and come at me in the comments. To make the playoffs plus 100, I mean, you're not really winning nothing there. And then the over-under odds, 43.5. Again, I think that's a bit rich. I'm not going to lie. The Warriors championship odds are barely better than teams like the Lakers and the Grizzlies, for example, who are definitely higher than the Warriors for me. 43.5 also feels a little bit high, but I understand it. You have Steph, you have Clay, you don't have Clay, you have Dre. There's some upside here, technically, with Kuminga. So a little bit of a shorter episode here. We're turning these out here so we can continue the series and finish this series. So thank you guys so much for watching this channel and liking the video. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe here to the channel. Follow me on X at Sean_DAVI for more great content. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you guys tomorrow. Stay safe. Catch you on the next one. Peace out.